Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Star Fish, where our mission is to change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. I love the reviews. Make sure to share some of those. Make sure to share some of these episodes because they provide a lot of value. It's got some great people on. I'm excited for our guest today. Ashley and her husband live in Montana, Billings, Montana, and which is really, really cool because that's like one state below where I live. We met through Arte. They are in the real estate business. They have a real estate brokerage. They're investors in real estate. They've been doing that for about 10 years. I've got Ashley on. She was a ranch kid, grew up that way. We were just chatting briefly. She went to Denver. She came back, got into real estate. We'll get into some of that. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you started out on the ranch. You said you hated it, and then where it took you, and then where you are now.
Yeah, so I grew up, I'm a Eastern Montana ranch kid. At the time, if you'd asked me when I was at any point before high school, if this was the life that I, wanted or, any of those, I would have said no. I hated it. And not because of the nothing, but like you just had to work. I mean, you grew up like the kids in town, they got to go to the pool and they got to go swimming during the summer. Our pool was a horse tank, and that was the pool or like the creek. And then we grew up working, which at the time, when you're a kid and you're in the middle of it, that just sucks. So, but then as an adult, you look back and you look at your friends who got to stay in town, and some of them, don't get me wrong, are very successful, but it's a different level of work ethic that you have when you've been out with your parents helping feed cows, and your job when you couldn't even touch the pedals was just to put the truck in neutral. So it just kind of went forward and you just drive. And I couldn't touch the pedals, but that was my job. I just had to keep it going straight. We live in Eastern Montana, so it's pretty flat. It was easy to keep going straight. But that was, you always had a purpose, and you were always there to be helping. I suppose it's foreign for some people, but it was just a way of life here. So now I super appreciate it. If we had kids, we would absolutely make sure that we were out of town and doing all those things because they need that way of life. I think especially now where they can disconnect and be and start to problem solve on their own. And that's something that I had to learn how to problem solve on my own very early in life, just because of ranch life. So that was my upbringing, at least. Yeah.
Well, and then tell us a little bit about where that took you and how you got where you're at. And
yep. So that took me down. I always had little. So I always joke that I was a sex ed and dodgeball teacher, which is health and PE. I did that for a few years. And I loved it. And I love coaching. And I was always, if I was teaching, I had side hustle jobs. I was coaching just to try to make enough money to make ends meet. And then I had 27, had a quarter life crisis, and I quit teaching. I went and I ran away to Denver, and everybody thought that was absolutely crazy, and I'd never really been to Denver before, even though I was only in Montana. I was pretty sheltered at that point, and I ran away and I loved it. And it was all the things, but I was very poor in Denver because it's a very expensive city. And that was 10 years ago, let alone now. So went down to Denver, had an absolutely great time, got to kind of spread my wings a little bit more, but came back. And my mom had told me, and she was a principal in Montana at a bigger school. And she said, well, why don't you just get your real estate license? You always like selling, you like houses, you get your real estate license and teach. So that way you always keep all your benefits and your salary and the security of teaching, but use your real estate as a side hustle. And thank God I only listened to half of her advice, and I got the real estate license. And it was one of those God moments where for the first few years, God just opened every door. And it wasn't that everything was rainbows and sunshine, but it was just a very natural path for me to be on because I liked helping people. I made good money. I got to travel. I got to do all of a completely different life than what I had had before. And then I started hiring humans, and then life got significantly harder in some ways and then better in others. So that was kind of how I came up from ranch kid to teacher, and then coach, which then led me to entrepreneur/coach now, which I just do that with my team. And that's really where my heart is helping my team, coaching my teammate, like my agents on my team, so they can have a better life. That's what really gives me my joy, is when they get to get that first big paycheck and go, holy shit, like you can make actual money. And I'm like, I know. It's super cool.
That is so cool. So you said it kind of got tougher as you started to obviously recruit people, and what were some of the challenges you have had and how have you worked through them?
I mean, I think I've had the same challenges that any entrepreneur. I mean, hiring humans is the most rewarding and hardest part of owning your own business, because those light bulb moments that they have are spectacular. When you get to see them finally break through, and it's typically, yeah, they can know the scripts and they can know how to do all of the contracts and whatnot. But the thing that stands in their way is whatever their limiting belief is around their abilities, because they grew up in a home, and I'm a big underdog person. If they have an underdog story, man, I'm going to really like, they're going to be my people. And that was the same when I was a teacher. I loved my underdog kids. So I gravitate towards that, which sometimes bites me, because trying to explain to somebody their worth, if they don't understand it, it can be almost impossible. So we do a tremendous amount of personal growth. So if you're on the team, at this point, everybody on our team has done 75 hard at least once. My husband is doing a live hard year. I've done it 3 times. My other agents have done it a couple. So that's a huge part. So when I interview people, I tell them, while I cannot make you, and this is not mandated, this is part of the culture of being here. We all see the same therapist because everybody knows Dan, and Dan understands the ins and outs of the team and working for us. So it's really about like, how do we make the human better? Because if the human is better, you just produce it at a higher level. You don't take the junk from home to work. You don't take the junk from work home as much. And in sales, it feels like you're getting kicked in the teeth over and over and over, and they get those no's over and over. And it's like, it's fine to get no's. In fact, just expect a no. And then when you get a yes, it's great. But as long as you're working on you, it makes the no's a lot easier. It's not they're saying no to you, who you are as your person. It's that they don't want your product. They don't want your service at this time. So that's how we roll.
That's good. What are some of the, I mean, you talked about 75 hard. What are some of the challenges? Like, you're making it sound, and I'm sure it's not, but you're making it sound relatively easy. What are some of the challenges you've overcome over the last, 10 years, coming from working for someone to running your own company?
I mean, learning, I grew up as a ranch kid. It's a different kind of entrepreneur, than having like a brick and mortar. For good and bad reasons. So, I mean, just learning, about taxes. I've had terrible accountants that have taken me on real financial rides because I didn't know how to hold them accountable to what was happening. I've had people in the company who took advantage of the fact that I was super green with real estate, or not with real estate, but like business. And they knew that. And so money would disappear. So I mean, I've paid a lot of stupidity taxes, and yet I wouldn't change it. I mean, we've had people leave the team that took a lot of business with them that wasn't theirs to take. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, like karma's, and I want them to succeed, but like you always have, unfortunately, when you bring in people are selfish, and they might not be able to see past their immediate like scarcity mindset. And so they'll do things that are outside of character. Because for the most part, I believe I really do bring on people of good character. But when they start to get scared, and you go 6 months, of not hitting the, what they think to be easy money in real estate, then they start to make decisions out of scarcity. It's like, no, you just have to stick with it. Anything in sales, anything worth doing, it's hard and it takes time. 6 months is not enough time to see whether or not you're going to be successful at anything. So we've definitely brought in those people, and it hurts because I put a tremendous amount of emotional energy into those people. And so when those things happen, it is incredibly difficult. And you also just have to say, hey, this is their path and there's nothing I can do about it. We don't let, we implement new procedures to help to avoid situations in the future. We learn from our mistakes. We don't just keep going, oh, it's okay. But you just move forward, and you do the best with the information you have at the time, and you fail forward. consistently.
What are some of the systems that you put in place to help in these situations?
So we have done, I mean, more like for instance, with the accountants, just, hey, we need regular P&Ls. We weren't getting anything, or hey, we need to know, like, so from a lot of our vendors now, we're asking more questions because honestly, we understand the questions to ask now more. We just hired a marketing company, and we kind of, I felt a little bit bad, but we put her more through the ringer than we normally would have. We'd normally just sign up and go, sweet. Not anymore. Like, hey, how are we going to measure success? What are we going to do? Everything has to be quantifiable and measurable. And if we can't do that, if we go into it, we need to still have a way to say, how do we know if we're succeeding? Like, and with the agents, we sit and we do a really, really in-depth, far more in-depth. Every single person who I've done this process with, they're like, this is the most in-depth interview I've ever done. And they all really, really enjoy it. But like when we talk about their future and their goals, one of the things that I'll ask them is, at 1, 3, and 5 years, like we talk about job and personal, but like, what's a personal goal for you? And everybody always says, I want to be in the best shape of my life. How do you quantify that? And then they sit there and they're so stumped. It's easy for them to talk about their past and all their things back there. But when we get to the future part, the 1, 3, and 5 years, and we fill out these different check boxes, it really gets hard for them. And in fact, a lot of people, I've had people cry during the interview, not because I'm being mean, but because they realize like they've never sat and actually looked at their life, either from the lack of what they've done in their past, because sometimes it really brings out, you really haven't done much. You say you do, you want all these really big things. And when we get to the future, they go, well, I don't know, I've never thought about it. Well, maybe that's why your past doesn't look that great, is because you've never spent the time to build your future, So we really, everything that we do now is like, what is the benchmark? Either you hit it or you didn't. And I think, going through 75 hard and the culture that we have around that is that it is not a, hey, I tried. No, you either did something or you didn't. It's a very black and white line around completing a task, or you made your calls, or you got that many closings or appointments. And it's much easier if they go through a program such as 75 hard, because they just understand it in a different way, versus a lot of people are like, well, I tried and I just, trying is just saying that you're okay failing. So
that's awesome. And so, how do you feel ranching and all of that, like some of the things have gone into what you do now?
The work ethic for me is probably the piece for good and bad. I, at one point a few years ago, drove myself to the emergency room because I was pretty sure I was having a heart attack. I wasn't, but I got in trouble because I was like, no, you guys are fine. I can take care of this, because I was running myself into the ground easily with 100-hour weeks for months. And just not, and part of that is I know that I can run at a very high level for a long time because it's bred into my DNA. I come from ranchers and they don't take vacations. If you know a rancher who's really a rancher or a farmer, they don't take farmers might be a little bit more seasonality to it. But yeah, they don't ever go anywhere. They just always are working, and they're the salt of the earth people, but they will work until they die. And so luckily I do have that ability to switch that on when I need. My big thing has been to learn to pull back a little bit, to be more present with my family. So when I'm with family, I'm present. My nephew, one time we were on a boat, we were boating, and I spent the whole time, and he just kept saying, the gal's, I won't say the gal's name, let's just say it was Sarah. I hate Sarah. I spent the entire time dealing with Sarah when we were on the boat, and I couldn't be present with them. So it's like I have to be able to go 110 when I'm at work, but then I need to have the ability to pull back when I'm with family, unless there's a fire. And if there's a fire, call the fire department. I can't do anything for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good thing. So tell me, how did you meet your husband, and how did both of you guys get into real estate? Because you haven't touched on that.
Oh, so my hubby is my best friend. We met on Tinder. I swiped right. He swiped right. It was Tinder love. He was an oil field guy at the time. So he was in North Dakota doing oil field stuff, making great money. And he kept saying, you move to me. Well, luckily I am more stubborn than him. And I was like, no, 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 you come back. And he really wanted, if you know anything about the Bakken during the oil field days, it was a whole different world that I did not want to go and live in.
Right.
It's kind of the Wild West. And so I knew I wanted to stay in Billings. I had a good business there at the time already. I was a good producer at that point. And so he came back. He did some real estate kind of personality test things, and he tested better than me, which he still doesn't let me forget. So he came back to the real estate school, and then he just jumped into real estate. And we've kind of been we've been locking arms now on this for, I think he's been with me doing real estate actively for 6 or 7 years now. We've been together for 9, I think. So yeah. Okay. Yep. That's wow. And it's, yeah, I love getting to, there's days that we want to kill each other, which any married couple knows that. But the fact that I get to hang out with my best friend every day it's one of, like, we have to do a lot of work on our relationship. It's not just something like it's just all rainbows and butterflies. Like, no, we have a great counselor. We have, we go to, I call it marriage camp. It's the Gottmans. If you know what the Gottman marriage book, and he does actual like courses. And we went and did this whole weekend thing down in Florida because it was warmer. And oh my God, there were some people crying, and you could tell it was the first time they'd worked on anything in their marriage. We spent 90% of the time laughing because we know each other so well, and we know all of our ups and downs that the other one has and our quirks, that we really got to enjoy that. And it wasn't, hey, you act kind of like a B word. No, I know not all, but I know 90% of my faults, and he knows his, and we can make light of it, and that's okay. So we enjoy that part of it. And so that's kind of how we work together, and we have our own lanes, and we try to stay in our own lanes, but sometimes we play bumper cars. So
that's awesome. So, I mean, you're obviously a very driven person. I'm sure there may be days, may not be. Are there days that you don't feel like going to work?
100%.
And if so, how do you get through those days?
You just do it. I don't, don't get me wrong, there are days that I don't get my power list done, right? There are those days, but for the most, if you want to be a professional, you have to show up as one. If you want to make the professional money, you have to show up as one. And I can see it in my business every single time when I start to not get my power list done on a consistent basis, it very quickly goes down. It takes a lot longer to build it back up. So if you just show up and start, it's like going to the gym. Nobody really is super excited to get in the car, to go to the gym, to do the thing. But once you're there, you're fine. Once you're doing the reps, you're doing the thing. And that's the thing about whatever businesses it is, because 90% of us in business need some kind of customer. If you're just not going to go after the customer, go get a W-2 job and go help the person who knows how to go after the customer, because all you're doing is putting your livelihood, your family's livelihood, everybody else, you're actually putting your clients, because one of the things with my team is you have to be at a certain production level, because there's so many, and I think this is true in any business, but I'll use real estate. There's a lot of agents out there right now who are pushing people into selling their home or buying homes that they have no business buying and selling, because it's truly not the best situation. We actually talk people out of, I have a friend right now, and I'm telling her, don't sell your house right now. It doesn't make sense for you to sell this. At this, knowing everything about her story, and I think she still will, at least someday I can say, hey, it wasn't what I told you to do. But I'll talk people out of it more. And when I'm showing them homes, I'll point out every negative thing about the house. If you still like the house after I tell you all the negatives, it's yours. But if I can talk you out of it, you should have never, this is not your house, So I think that's the big thing is, have enough production so you can honor what your 8 clients need. They need you to show up and actually do what's best for them, not try to get your mortgage covered. If you're scared about where your next mortgage payment is coming from, you're just trying to, first house, let's write an offer. Yeah, the inspection didn't come back great. It's okay. It's fine. You can handle it. Can you? I don't know. If you're a first-time home buyer, should you be taking something on like that? Probably not. So that's the big thing, I think, is if you do the reps, you get to come from a place of integrity in all aspects of your life.
I agree with that. So when you're coaching your team, because obviously you're super disciplined in doing this stuff, but there's people listening to this that are brand new into entrepreneurship and they're just like, oh yeah, this makes it sound really like easy, but it's not. So what are some, like I said, what are some tangible tips, beyond just go do it? That's that great
Right.
Nike slogan. What are some tangible tips that would help someone possibly if they're dealing with, say, mental health, they're dealing with, coming from a job, they're having to drive themselves and they're tired and they don't want to get up and all the things. What are some tangible things that you've used, your husband's used, or help some of your team use to
Right.
actually get through the days that you really don't want it to be there?
Right. Oh, it really depends on the person, to be honest, because everybody's why is different. Some people are not driven by money. So getting those big paychecks, it doesn't matter because their limiting belief is maybe that money is bad, or that they don't deserve it. So we really have to get in and get to know each of our agents to kind of know what that is. But at this point, I think the more that they work on themselves, the easier that becomes. Just again, nothing to do with real estate per se or whatever the business is. But the more you can push your team to be a whole person and they're not coming into your business with all of their baggage, I do think the easier that is. It's easier to have those hard conversations around why. But how do we get them to do it? Boy, I hate trying to use the stick or the carrot, but sometimes that's what it is. Like either you have to show up and do the activity, and if you do it, man, like I've put out where I would send, if you hit certain numbers, I'll send you and your spouse to Mexico for X number of days. And for some personalities that's worked really well and some it hasn't. So knowing how they tick and what drives them on each person, and knowing at this point, like one of our things is either you're hitting or you're doing a certain level of lead gen, or you might have to, pay the team back a certain amount, or you have to go and one thing that we're looking at, like you have to go clean like some of the Airbnbs. Like, I don't know, like, or one thing I've told people is like, hey, let's go skydiving. If you hit your numbers, you get to go skydiving. If you don't hit your numbers, you get to go skydiving, so like, I don't, it's so, I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't have a good answer for that, only because every one of my teammates is driven by something else that they're really looking at what their why is. If I have a younger kid who his big thing is cars, then we talk about cars. What's your vision board? We do vision boards. We do all of those things. But
so basically, I think, guys, if you're listening to this and you're not really sure how to drive yourself, really hooking into your why and,
yes.
What is it that you really want, and having it in front of your face. I mean, it's not about, you're like Ashley sending out like, hey, I'm going to send you here. It's not about your leadership, or if you're working with someone, most entrepreneurs don't have anyone they're working with. So you've got to do that for yourself. You got to figure out why are you doing this, and really sucking into that every day. If it's for the car, if it's for the trip, if it's for the lifestyle, if it's for freedom for your family, whatever it is, really, really hooking into why are you here? And why are you running the business that you're running? And, Ashley, I can tell it's just really good at this, and does it habitually. And one of the things, is to learn how to habitually do things, so you don't even really know how you're doing things. And then in order to help more people on your team, if you're listening to this and you're running a team, this is something that's really helped me, is really analyzing what makes you successful and what makes you have those good months and what makes you have the bad months, so you can do more of what gives you a good month, and you can explain it to your team. So hopefully they can hook into something, because we're all driven differently. I agree with that 100%. Something that will help them drive on the days that they don't want to drive, because we all have those days. Definitely. Has there been anything kind of that you've gone through, Ashley, that has been a huge catalyst in motivation, or I don't know if demotivation is the right word, I think it might be. Like, has there been anything that's, been a major struggle or a major, just something that really I just feel like most people go through moments in their life that are instrumental. There's
Yeah.
pivotal events that happen that transform our lives. Has there been
Yeah.
anything like that for you?
Uh, one of the moments that my life could have went either way was in the first year of real estate. I was an assistant, and I was an assistant to a producing team in our area, and the agent at the time had me as an admin. And I am a dumpster fire as an admin. I should never be. I can do it now because I understand all the aspects of a real
Right.
estate deal. But as a new person who my nothing about me is a I daughter and T crosser, but can I go out and sell all day long? 100%. So he had me in the wrong role. So he pulled me in at one point and said, "Hey, this isn't working. You're not real estate material." And it crushed me. I just, to have your mentor and somebody who you perceive to be, your person on your team say, "Hey, this isn't for you." And I always was like, man, I feel like I can do this. They just kept me in the stable kind of thing.
Right.
So I went to an older agent who I was at the brokerage, and I'm bawling at this point. And and he's like, "All right, let's go have coffee." So we go over to the coffee shop across the street, and I'm telling him the whole thing. And well, he said, I can't do real estate. And this older gentleman was like, "All right, kid, it's okay." And he goes, "I promise, just stick with it, and you're gonna be okay. You're gonna make it." And whether he actually remembers this or not, having that conversation, I have no idea. But that was a pivotal moment. So then it went from, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this," to now I had a chip, and now I was going to prove somebody wrong. So that for me, if I am put in a corner where I am expected that I can't succeed, the worst thing that can honestly happen for me is for people to go, "Oh yeah, she's good." Okay. I need that chip. I need that. That is one of like, if I can crush humans in the sweetest way, I want to do that. I want to win. I want to be number one. So when you put me in that corner of you're not expected to do well, that is my driver. So then once I left that team, within a few months, I outproduced the whole team in sales very quickly. And I still think that first agent who had me on his team, because if I wasn't on that team, I wouldn't have got all that baseline knowledge that I had to be successful. So truly, if it wasn't for him, and there are no hard feelings there, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I've actually told him that before. I've just sent him random texts like, "Thank you for what you've done." Both of them. And the one who fired me and the one who picked me back up afterwards. Those type of moments. We had a business partner at one point who kind of did us dirty. And that we came out of that swinging big time, and not at that person, but we dug our heels in and we busted our asses. Again, I didn't know if we were going to pull ourselves out of it, and we did. So every time which is a little bit of a drug, because you kind of know, if I'm put in a corner, I'll figure it out. And that, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that, because they can kind of get lazy, and they know, if I really dig in, we're gonna get in there, and I'll pull us back out of it. So that it is my strength and my kryptonite at the same time. But yeah, anytime that somebody has said she can't do it, that's my favorite time, So
that's really good. So yeah, if you're listening to this, know what drives you. And also, that guy that did pull you aside, you never know if you're that person that can help someone win. So, someone said no, and that was the hard part. But if someone hadn't pulled you aside and said, yes, you could, you might have taken that no and quit. And, so it's a combination. And then through that conditioning there, now all the future people that said, like, you can't do things, you were able to use those as catalysts. But that's really cool that guy did that. And, if you're listening to this, you just never know when your word, what you say to someone, is going to hurt or help. That's something I know I think about a lot. I'm like, sometimes I'm not conscious of what I say, and I need to be more conscious of what I say, because it can completely ruin or make someone's future. Based on that. So that's really cool. So in wrapping up, we always make these short and sweet, but in wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, as you know, and then anything that, we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listener. So first,
Yeah.
final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
Dig uncomfortably deep on your why. Don't just settle. I have people that will tell me, oh, for my family. Why? Really, like, go 7 deep. What if you tell me family, go 7 deep. And by the last one, if you're in tears, if you're emotional, that's your why. Whatever that first 6 on the surface are, it's probably not it. So go uncomfortably deep.
That's so good. Need to do that more. I love that. Number 2 question is, what's a favorite quote and why?
Fail forward faster.
That's pretty straightforward.
I tell my team that all the time. Like, if we're failing and we're moving forward, I am perfectly happy. Like, then we are actually doing things.
That's good. And third, final question. What's one word or sentence you would want on your gravestone?
She chose the hard path. Because I really believe that if you take the hard path, your life is going to be far more fulfilling than those that didn't. So do the hard thing.
That's good. All right. So you're running someone in the coffee shop. They're like, Ashley, that was awesome. I'm going to work on my why. I'm going to get deeper on that. I'm trying to think of some of them. We touched on a lot of different areas, Tinder, all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to do some of those things. What's something we didn't touch on that you feel would be impactful for a listener?
Find your support. One of the things that I think I'm lucky because I do have a really, really great support system, but you have to find your tribe of your people. Especially if you're going to go out into the entrepreneurial world, one of the things that we know when we bring people on the team, whoever's at home, if it's the spouse, whoever that is, if they aren't on board with it, they will sabotage you, whether, it just always happens, so really you need to find your tribe, whether it's a spouse or your friends or your family, really making sure that you have those people around you. And you might have to be in no man's land for a while if you're surrounded by takers and people who just aren't. It's not that they should say yes. You don't need yes people, but you need people to remind you, like, it's okay when things are hard and to keep pushing you. So that would be the thing is, find your tribe of others who are not yes people, but they'll push you. And I think that's a really, really important thing for our team too.
That's good. I love it. Very awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe. Like we said, make sure to, as you go out there and change one life or one starfish at a time, we can together change the world. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, Ashley's information will all be in the show notes. Make sure to reach out to her. I'm sure she will be happy to help, whatever the question is. So thank you again, Ashley, so much for being on today. Appreciate it. Let's go out there and change the world.